I'm Jeb Butler with the Butler Law Firm. Today we'll talk about negligent security cases. A negligent security case arises when a business that makes money from some type of customer fails to provide reasonable security measures for that customer, and the customer is hurt as a result. We see negligent security cases at apartment complexes, at restaurants, gas stations, or it can be any type of business where the owner or operator of the business knows that its customers or its patrons or its tenants are at risk of becoming victims of violent crime. But despite knowing that, the business fails to provide reasonable security measures for its customers. The most common type is apartment complexes, where an apartment complex knows that there's a lot of crime going on the property there, but fails to provide adequate security measures. Then the people who pay to live there or their guests can become victims of violent crime. And if the cause of that victimhood is the apartment complex or the business not providing enough security measures, even when they knew they should, then there can be a negligent security case against the owner or the operator of the business. Negligent security cases can take the form of shooting cases, stabbing cases, or cases about sex crimes, such as rape. If the victim survives, then the negligent security case is a type of PI or personal injury case. If the person does not, then the negligent security case is a type of wrongful death case. Today, we'll talk about 4 practical things that we look for in a negligent security case, and then 3 legal or more technical considerations. So, when someone has been harmed and we suspect it was the fault of the business owner to provide security measures they knew they needed to provide, one of the things we look for first is the presence of security guards. I'm going to talk about each of these 4 considerations, then I'll give an example from a case that our firm handled. This is a pretty obvious thing. It's most common in apartment complexes. If there's a lot of crime on the premises, a reasonable apartment owner knows I need to have some security guards. They ought to provide. Another thing that we look for is gates. If there are a lot of criminals coming and going in an apartment complex, the easy, simple way to keep them out is to put up a gate. Now, a lot of apartment complexes have these, but, and we'll come back to this later, you'd be surprised how many times the gate stops working, and then the apartment complexes just won't spend the money to fix the gate, with the result that criminals have free access to and from the property. Another thing that we look for are lights. They say sometimes that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Well, light is a great deterrent to criminals. It's cheap, it's easy, everybody likes it. Nobody loses when you put up the street lights around an apartment complex or in the gas station or in the parking lot of the restaurant. But you'd be surprised how many times a business owner puts up the lights and then when they burn out, doesn't bother to replace them. That leaves dark spots on the property where criminals can hang out. Another thing we look for is a word that you don't often see in the legal context except in the negligent security area, and that is what we call blight. B-L-I-G-H-T. And blight just means that the landlord, the owner or the operator has allowed the property to look really bad, to let things get extremely run down, such that common criminals who drive by can look at it and say, all right, if I want to pull something, there's a place I can go to get away with it because the owner obviously doesn't care. We call that blight. So let's look at some examples. These examples are going to arise from a case we handled in Atlanta, Georgia, in DeKalb County, at a place called Candler Road. For those of you who know the area, it's Ember Drive off Candler Road. And we'll look at some pictures that can give us examples of the things that we often see in negligent security cases. So you'll notice these have exhibit stickers on them. That's because we use these in a deposition, and depositions taken of the owner and the security company. One common example of blight is gang tagging, and that's what we see here. The Zoo Crew is some kind of gang. We think Big B South probably was too, 20 gang. You can see there. Oh, well, that's more zoom than I needed, but there it is. You can see 20 gang there. Anyway, there's obviously a lot of gang tagging. So that's important for two reasons. First, it should alert the owner or operator of the apartment complex that there's some trouble here and they need to do something about it. And second, it definitely contributes to blight. People who see this, if they're criminals and are looking for a place to conduct a robbery or hit a lick of some other kind, they know this is a place they can likely get away with. Here's more graffiti, more contribution to blight. This was a gate motor. We talked about how sometimes people have gates, they break, and then the apartment never fixes them. Well, after my client's 15-year-old son was shot and killed in this apartment complex, I went out there with my camera and I took this picture along with the other ones that we're looking at. And this shows a gate motor that obviously has not worked in a long time. Now we can show you a little more about this. Let's see. So here we are. This is a part of Atlanta. I'm going to adjust the screen a little bit so it's easier to see. So let's see. I believe here's I-20. I think it's here. Yeah, this looks right. It's Ember Drive. Take off the label so it's clear, and you would turn and go back this way. And all of this is the apartment complex. And we can get, I think, a better view. Yeah. So to get into this particular apartment complex, you would approach right here down Ember Drive. And let's see if I can get even closer. Yeah. This lets you see what should be going on. I don't know if you can make this out or not, but there's a black gate here that was no longer working. At the time this picture is taken, they've at least done something. They put up another gate and there's a guy there checking you coming and going. This picture was taken after our case, I believe. Yeah, so this picture was taken after our shooting. At the time of our shooting, that gate was totally broken. There was no one there. And then there's another gate that you can see over here. Notice that gate is new. That came up after our case. At the time of our case, there was just nothing there, allowing criminals to come and go freely. Note here this guard shack. I believe we'll have a picture of that coming up. Let's see. Yeah, we'll go right to it. So this is the way the guard shack looked at the time of our case. The door's off the hinges. It's obviously in disrepair. No guard. If a criminal sees this, they again know they've got pretty good access to the property. Here's another picture of blight. Now this exact thing with a bunch of boarded up apartments can be a problem because criminals can hide out in there. You can go in behind the plywood and hide out and wait till dark if you want to. Or you can have squatters living there, which is another problem. What we proved in this case, it settled for $3 million. What we proved in order to achieve that result is that this property owner and this security company just did not care. And we felt like this was a pretty good sign. They basically had abandoned the whole apartment and left this thing on the mailbox for people who were supposed to put concerns. The office is locked. If you need assistance, write your note with your building and unit number as well as your phone number. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you, management. Management just didn't care. They left the tenants here to fend for themselves. And when management and ownership knows there's a crime problem and they know their tenants are in danger, you need to take care of them, not tape up a sign and leave them to themselves. So that takes care of our 4 practical considerations: guards, gates, lights, and blight. And we'll talk now about some legal considerations that we look for. The first one is a legal term, invitee. The strongest negligent security cases are brought by invitees. That is to say, people who are on the property for the mutual benefit of themselves and the business owner. So if I go into a store and I intend to buy a bag of chips, I'm an invitee. Because I walked in the store where I have a right to be, I'm like invited there. And I'm intending to buy something, which means I'm going to make a transaction that also benefits the owner. So if there's a mutual benefit test, I get chips, they get money, that means I'm an invitee. In the context of an apartment, a tenant is an invitee, so is a legal, like a guest of the tenant. If you live at an apartment and you invite me over for a party, and I show up, then when I show up at your invitation, then I am an invitee, and that gives me standing to bring a negligent security case. Another consideration is whether the crime is targeted. So it is harder to prevail or to win in a negligent security case if the crime was targeted. The strongest negligent security cases are those in which there's a criminal who's just out looking around, trying to find a place to commit a crime, and they pick this particular property because it looks bad and they think they can get away with it. That's the kind of crime that a business ought reasonably to be able to prevent. Usually with guards, gates, lights, or preventing blight. It's harder to win that case if it's a targeted crime. If person X goes out looking for person Y and just happens to find person Y on this certain property and then harms them there, kills them or hurts them or whatever, then it's harder to argue that the business owner or operator should be responsible for that because they couldn't see the argument or the beef between these two people. The third consideration that we look for from a legal perspective is related to the first one, but it's a little bit different or a little broader, and that is duty. Did the entity that we're trying to collect from that has the insurance policy that we filed the lawsuit against owe a duty to the person who was harmed? Normally, a negligent security case needs to be brought under a specific Georgia statute that authorizes claims against owners or operators of the property, because those two, owners and operators, owe a duty to their invitees.